Same with Mars. So the science approach is very different than on space station. So this is, I think, a key point in terms of both the science and the moon and why it should be a goal in itself. The fact that we may not find the science done there interesting, that's okay. I personally also don't find oceanography very interesting, but I'm glad that there's some people that do and continue to explore the oceans. I find Antarctic science interesting and Mars science interesting, so I devote my career to studying those objects, but that doesn't mean that there isn't a scientific return in oceanography or in, say, lunar rocks as well. And I think it's a mistake for us to think that we can only choose one, that we have to choose a moon base or a Mars base, and that we can't do both of them. Question here.
Yes, sir. Two questions. Since Mars sample return, we seem to agree, and a lot of us have thought so for a long time, is a key element in the human presence.
Right.
Do you think that it's better to do a sample return with in situ propellant production that offers a lot of returns in the sense of having many small rockets that test the in situ propellant from stem to stern, top to bottom, front to back, however you want to think about it, so that, you know, when your astronaut ultimately turns the key and wants to come home, you've got a good human rating basis? Or do you think it's better to do a sample return with one single large, the Earth return vehicle that could be mocked up and sent and test it stem to stern, but you just don't get as many tests of the return system by that method? The second thing is, can't we settle down and stop getting sort of football teamy about this Moon-Mars thing? We've got a trade space, we've got risk assessment, we've got reward assessment. Why don't we sit down, and if the Augustine Commission doesn't do it, why don't we send them back to try and do it, do a true risk-reward study on the relative merits of investment in Mars versus the investment in Moon, and keep it public and keep it clear and let everyone see what those trades are, because I don't think that we've seen anything like that yet. We'd love to generate it within the Mars Society. We don't often get the database required. What do you think?
Okay, you had two questions. Let me go to the sample return one. That's a good question. What should be the designing principles of the sample return? I would say number one should be to test and develop technologies for human landing. So you, to the extent possible, you use the same systems that you're going to need for humans. So if that involves ISRU, then you use it. If it doesn't involve ISRU, you don't. So the only criteria is that you design your system for human exploration. You say, okay, now I'm going to test that on sample return. So that, and number two would be to get as diverse and interesting set of samples for science as possible. So those would be the design criteria. Nothing else, I think, would really matter. You keep those principles
so
first.
That would point toward many little rockets sending many little samples back.
Maybe it would, maybe it wouldn't. It may turn to a big thing the size of a human exploration vehicle. Your second question about how do we come up with decisions and make a case, it's a much more difficult. What you say might be true in an ideal world, but in this real world, what happens is that there's lots of yelling and screaming, and people produce plans, and the plans are for 20 years, and then every 3 years there's a new bout of yelling and screaming, and the plans are erased, and we start over again. And it's a wonder we get anywhere, frankly.
That's not the thrust of my question.
Yeah.
The thrust of my question is, methodologically, don't we have the means to do a true risk-reward study on those two targets?
But that's not the way the decisions are made.
That may be the way the best decision should be made soon.
I agree. As I said,
in an ideal world,
true. In an ideal world, that would be how decisions would be made.
We make the ideal world.
Yeah.
It's our job to idealize the world. It's our democracy.
Yeah, good luck. Let me know when the world becomes ideal, and I will become a perfect gas.
I think that the position of the scientists is very clear. We need to do a lot of science before we are ready to send humans to Mars. We need to do this and this and this and that. And then only after we scientists are satisfied will let humans go to Mars. That's my impression that I have. We saw in the previous presentation that slide showing we need to send 5, 6 spacecrafts, then the sample return mission, and then humans. I think we can cut some of that off and just send humans to Mars, or, or send humans to Mars when humans are ready, not when science is ready. I think humans can wait before science is ready. I think science is ready right now already for the humans to go to Mars. Why do we need to do all that first? And then I think I agree that we need to have a permanent base on Mars. I completely agree, but I don't agree that we need to go there when we are ready to have a base on Mars. I think we need to go there when we are ready to go there. And then after that, we make the base on Mars. And then the last thing, I also don't completely agree about visiting the near-Earth asteroid, because that's another way to prepare the mission to Mars. So why do we try to go to a near-Earth asteroid to go to Mars? Let's try to go to Mars to go to Mars.
Well, okay, I have 2 points to your response. One is, go is a nice verb, but I prefer stay. So I say, when we're ready to stay on Mars, I'm not so interested in just going. The second point about near-Earth asteroids illustrates a philosophical point I'm trying to make here, is that Mars cannot be our only destination. It can be an important destination, but it cannot be our only destination. My brother really calls me up and asks, what are you doing about these near-Earth object asteroids that are going to hit into my house, right? He takes it all very personal, right? So at least for NASA, there's more destinations. Mars may be first among equals, but we have to recognize that, in a sense, we want to expand into the solar system. And I think that involves Moon, Mars, and near-Earth objects, all of them. And so we need a plan that integrates them. And then to your point about science, we're already doing science on Mars. What I'd like to see is that science aligned with human exploration. 3 more concise questions. That was a joke by Chris. He's got a great sense of humor. So we'll do 1 and then 2 here. So we'll do here and then here. Yeah.
Heinlein was right when he said the moon is a burnt-out slag heap. And as for Mars, not base, colonies.
Yeah,
That's what we need. Followed by the Terraform project. No later than 2100 getting started.
Yeah, I've been focusing on a research base, not a colony, and I emphasize that. What we see in Antarctica is a research base, not a colony. Now, maybe colonies will follow, but I predict, I go on record as predicting it, that government agencies won't establish colonies. NASA is a government agency. Now, NASA may do something which enables someone else to establish a colony, but we are not going to establish a colony. We are going to establish a research base just like we do in Antarctica. The United States Antarctic Research Program has no mandate to establish a colony or a settlement, only a research base. And I think that's the appropriate role for a government program. It doesn't preclude individuals coming behind and establishing a colony. No one has deemed Antarctica suitable for that. Maybe the Moon and Mars will be different. But in terms of NASA's goals, it ought to be to establish a research base. And so I'm not saying we can't have a colony. I'm just saying that's not what we'll do. Question here.
My name is George Drake, and first of all, I'd like to thank you for coming to the Mars Society, even though we're not the Moon Society.
Right. Well,
and you know, I think your work is very important. I think your ideas are very important. You should know that I am not a traditional member of the Mars Society in the sense that I came to this location from the environmental community. And I think that one of the biggest flaws we have is that as a society we look at Mars and we think, oh, well, there's no deadline.
There's no deadline.
No deadline. Just because Obama or Kennedy or somebody hasn't said we have 10 years to do this. I think there is a deadline. We have to do this before the environment goes belly up. And so I don't think this is a let's do it right situation. This is a let's do it situation, and the goal is terraforming.
Okay, that's a